Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. A little later than normal. I do apologize. I am debating on whether to actually read the title listed, if I should read that one or if I should read a different one, given that, like I said, it's a little later in the day. It might make more sense to read a different one. That being said, my other options are the Depression Cooking, The Season of the Witch, or the Kitchen Ad Archivist, or not activist, activist. Yeah, Kitchen Activist. I think that was the other one. I'm gonna check really quickly with that one and see if there's anything specific I need to be aware of for that. Just bear with me. Other than that, how has the day been? I went to a job interview. It was pretty okay, I feel. We'll see though if they give me a call back or not. Sorry for being a little sidetracked. Why am I having such a hard time finding this thing? Of course. I should have probably prepped this a little sooner. Ooh, this might be it. Maybe, maybe. How do I sign in? I can't remember. Yep, there we go. I think that's the one. I don't want to create an account though. I want to use my existing account. We have we've had some rain today, so I can hear it out my window. It's very lovely. I was a little worried that the sound was going to be a little too loud, so I went ahead and I turned the volume down. Heard the volume down. I went and turned the. Oh, I'm not using my head. I closed the window a bit so that it wouldn't be so loud. I'm trying really hard not to sneeze. Was there anything else? Trying to check. I'm trying to check. I think it was just the one. So, Kitchen Activist doesn't really feel like a bedtime stories kind of book. There goes the rain again. I don't know how well my mic is taking up the volume or not. It's really loud for me though. I think considering the other day that the birds were coming through so loudly, I think it's pretty safe to say. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do depression cooking. Just give me a moment while I go ahead and download this one. And I'll do gender rituals later. I also need to remember to go back and change the text. After the fact. Yeah, okay. Just bear with me 1 minute more. I'm going to bring the lights down in here a little darker and see if my projection light works as a good quality light change. Just bear with me while I do that. I really hope that this comes in okay. Nope, wrong line. Well, it is so bright. Does that come up behind me pretty good? I don't use this light very often, so it's not something I'm used to doing. Still getting familiar with it. Oh, goodness. There we go. Oh, my. It's not super great, but I'm willing to give it a try if you are. Then I will bring the mic just a tiny bit closer. Hopefully, not too much noise there, too. Hopefully, that's better. Good, 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 good. Let me see. Yeah, that works. Definitely done worse. Although, maybe. Oh. I was really hoping I would get this little guy. You friend. Okay, let's go back to train time and maybe switch it up a little bit there. I wonder if it's dark enough though. It still looks pretty dark or pretty light. This is a bit more dim. I think I can handle this. And we can go to bed space. Change the lighting to evening. Yeah, I think that works. Just such a grumpy little guy. I kind of like that one. But this does remind me of my boy. So I think I'm going to stick with it one. This one. Yeah. The outfit is very similar to what I'm kind of wearing myself today. I felt like it was appropriate. Okay. A warm, generous, and illustrated guide to nurturing yourself when life and the world is too hard. When artist Sonali Menezes found herself struggling with mental illness, disordered eating, and the crushing weight of capitalism, she began to look for easy and delicious ways to feed herself that would both fulfill her hunger and her need for care. Her method, non judgmental, anti diet, and approachable, became Depression Cooking, a book that combines recipes, personal memoir, and illustrations to provide a guide for those moments in all our lives when making a meal and loving yourself feels impossible. In each chapter, Sonali writes and draws about a challenging period in her life when food seemed more like an enemy than an ally, and shares the recipe and cooking tips that nurtured her body and her soul. From dal to ramen to things on toast, Depression Cooking lays out an approach that helps us through life's hardest challenges, whether that's becoming a new parent, being fired from a job, weathering grief, or living our own on our own for the first time. Part comic, part food memoir, part cookbook. Depression Cooking is a love letter to the sad, hungry, and exhausted versions of ourselves who always deserve care, community, and good food. This empathetic, innovative, and delightfully funny book is one and exactly the permission we all need to enjoy beautiful meals just because we can. Sonali Menezes is an artist, zinester, and writer. She lives in Hamilton, Ontario with her husband, cat, and houseplants. She loves food and eats it every day in celebration. Depression Cooking is her first book. Find her on Instagram at Sonali, spelled with how many E's is that? One, two. Sorry, just a moment. Her Instagram is SONALEEEE. I think that's the right amount of E's. Depression Cooking is copyright Sonali Menendez, or excuse me, Sonali Menezes, 2026, published by ECW Press, 665 Gerrard Street East, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, M4M1Y2. Phone number 416-694-3348. Info at ecwpress.com. Certified Canadian publisher. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form by any process, electronic, mechanical, photocopy, recording, or otherwise, without the prior written permission of the copyright owners and ECW Press. The scanning, uploading, and distribution of this book via the internet or via any other means without the permission of the publisher is illegal and punishable by law. This book may not be used for text and data mining, AI training, and similar technologies. Please purchase only authorized electronic editions and do not participate in or encourage electronic piracy of copyrighted materials. Your support of the author's rights is appreciated. Editor for the press, Jen Sukfong Lee. Copy editor, Sammy Chin. Cover illustrations, Sonali Menezes. Jennifer Castles. We Always Change Reprise Part 2. Lyrics were produced with permission from the artist. To the best of her abilities, the author has related experiences, places, people, and organizations from her memories of them. In order to protect the privacy of others, she has, in some instances, changed the names of certain people and details of events and places. Library and Archives Canada cataloging and publication. This book is funded in part by the Government of Canada. Ce livre est financé en partie par le gouvernement du Canada. We acknowledge the support of the Canada Council for the Arts. Nous remercions le Conseil des Arts du Canada de son soutien. We would like to acknowledge the funding support of the City of Hamilton's City Enrichment Fund, the Ontario Arts Council, or OAC, and the Government of Ontario. We also acknowledge the support of the Government of Ontario through the Ontario Book Publishing Tax Credit and through Ontario Creates. Please purchase the print edition and receive the ebook free. For details, go to ecwpress.com/ebook. And as I mentioned before, I am a reviewer only. I want to make a point of saying that, and I have my own little script of text that I wrote out for it. Give me a second. The ARC copy of this book was provided by NetGalley. Any thoughts or opinions are my own and not endorsed by either the author or the publisher. I am not being paid to promote this book, and my reviews are from an unbiased perspective. With that being said, all recordings on my channel and on my YouTube belong to me, and I ask if you use them in any way that you please credit me or my channel. I do not give permission for AI training data to train on my voice or on my content. if you would like to help support me and my work, you can find affiliate links to several book distributors on my About page. I'm happy to also provide targeted links to specific orders for this book through the Discord. And if you'd like to link to that, you can type exclamation Discord in chat, and that will bring you to that page. Let's begin. Title, or excuse me, dedication page. For Elizabeth Francis, aka Mama, who fed my body before I knew I had one. Introduction. An attempt at a preamble. In the 12th grade, I wrote a short memoir called With Complete Certainty, I Have Absolutely No Idea, for Mrs. Carol Holmes's writer's craft class. Mrs. Holmes was skeptical about my plan to tackle a memoir. Memoir is for older people, people who have led long and interesting lives. You are too young, she explained to me. I disagreed. Memoir is for everyone because ordinary people of all ages lead complex and beautiful lives. I put the words down anyway, writing between two basements, the downstairs computer lab at Mary Ward Catholic Secondary during the day and the desktop computer at my parents' home at night. I saved the pages and transferred them between computers with the help of my dark blue USB stick, kept safe in the pocket of my gray uniform pants. Mrs. Holmes gave me a 98%, an unsatisfactory grade for my little hypomaniac, sleep-deprived, rapidly beating heart housed in my underfed and perfection-striving body. 15 years later, I find myself tackling memoir again, but with a little more insight and a few more variables. I am turning a 30-page zine with recipes into something resembling a book. Now, it's safe to say that the antipsychotics have stamped out the hypomania and the mild illusions of grandeur, but they have also left me perpetually depressed, albeit in a healthier body. Today, I think that memoir is about meaning making. This process has been about taking the chaos and grief of leading a life while hungry and batshit crazy and making sense of it, of proving to myself that the clamor is worthwhile, that it's important to fill in the complexity of the how with providing the definitive answer of the why. This madness and sadness business is complex. How do I explain loving life while also thinking about suicide without sounding crazy? How can I talk about enjoying cooking while actively hating it and still have my recipes taken seriously? How do I admit to being successfully propagandized by diet culture without having any credibility yanked away from me in challenging diet culture? How do I write about food and depression with any authority while still fighting to maintain my recovery from disordered eating and active depression? I'm finding out in real time, just as you are. Most of my disordered eating experience has been self-diagnosed and self-directed. As I've learned through conversation, many people self-direct healing their relationships with food, and I'll be the first person to state I am no expert. If you find yourself actively struggling with depression, anxiety, disordered eating, and/or suicide ideation, there are parts of this book that will not be helpful. And while I've excluded a lot of the difficult stuff and focused on the parts that contributed to my present, I've chosen to include some remembered messy parts to provide a fuller picture. These may not be the right stories for you to hear at this time. I'm counting on you to be discerning, even though I know that's a complicated ask, and take care of yourself while reading. Some potentially upsetting topics I write about are food restriction and disordered eating, body image and body shame, body size and body weight, corporal punishment as a form of child discipline, sexual assault, substance use, patriarchal relationships, emotional abuse, and suicide ideation. While writing this book, I was confronted with two realities I was internally resisting. depression is a disability, and eating disorder is a disability. As my friend Anderson has put it, if your disability is disabling, then you are disabled. Now, for some background on this project. In 2021, I chose to write a love letter to other depressed humans struggling in the kitchen like me. It started out as a humble zine called Depression Cooking Easy Recipes for When You're Depressed as Fuck, which was launched in 2022 with support from artseverywhere.ca, publication studio Guelph, and Hamilton Artists Incorporated. Each copy was 8 letter-sized pieces of paper folded in half, stapled, and mailed or given away, at first for free. A zine, for those who don't know, is a do-it-yourself mini magazine that is self-published. Zinesters, such as myself, mostly make zines because they love them. They're not terribly lucrative given the costs of printing and shipping, and most zinesters hope to simply break even. The readers typically don't have a lot of disposable income, but after over a decade in the zine scene, I know they have gumption. Zines make everyday people into artists, cooks, and poets. Zines create space for us to make things and share information while rejecting the title of expert and complicating the idea of needing to be an expert on a topic to write about it. So here I am, a depressed, maybe mediocre but enthusiastic home cook, writing a book with the chaotic do it yourself spirit of a zine. One of the reasons I decided to expand depression cooking into a book was that, given the demand for the zine, distribution became unmanageable. Since launching the zine, I have done sporadic prints of 100 to 300 copies at a time, enlisting the help of my friends, my partner, and even my parents on occasion to hand collate, fold, staple, package, and mail depression cooking across the world. I couldn't keep up with the emails, requests, or Etsy messages. My DMs were filled with personal stories of depression, disordered eating, survival, and resilience. Strangers approached me on the streets and at protests, saying, "You wrote Depression Cooking, right?" Acquaintances divulged their deepest traumas outside of bars, in art galleries, and in cars. I couldn't thoughtfully respond to everyone and was filled with guilt for my inability to meet everyone's needs. People were hungry and depressed. They wanted more recipes, more stories, more information on me and the food I was sharing. They wanted gluten-free options, vegan options, cheese-free options. They wanted swear words-free versions, child-friendly versions, versions of the zine tailored to people with ADHD, versions of the zines in Spanish and French. They wanted to know what I ate and what made me feel better. They wanted more than I was able to offer. Central to depression cooking is a character I call Baby Sonali in all her many manifestations. The version who put herself to bed hungry, who secretly trimmed her arm hair with her dad's mustache scissors in the bathroom, who was afraid of Greenwood Station, who ate sushi and cupcakes and Mama's yellow chicken curry, who couldn't swallow food, who stopped eating, who was trying to heal her relationship with food. There's a lot of me and Baby Sonali in this book, more than I was anticipating, more than I'm comfortable with, enough to make me embarrassed. And while technically I've been writing about myself for over a decade through many zines, personal zines, this is my first foray into long form writing. I've been grappling with what feels like an inherent selfishness that imbues this project, an overindulgence in poring over the details of my own life so many don't have time to cook dinner. Excuse me, let me read that sentence again. I've been grappling with what feels like an inherent selfishness that imbues this project, an overindulgence in poring over the details of my own life when so many don't have time to cook dinner. But there's a contradiction here. Whenever I've written perzines, readers say it helps. Some say it helps a lot. I think there's a porousness to personal narrative where others can cross a narrative threshold and see themselves in the story, a messy, undefined permeability where the words become a sponge and a mirror and a soft landing all at once while simultaneously resisting universality. And I know there are limitations to this porousness tied up in the boundaries of my identity and experiences. Here are six of those limitations. Number one, the narrative is focused on my experiences with food restriction. Other forms of disordered eating should also be written about by someone with lived experience. Two, depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, and bipolar 2 disorder are centered. Other forms of madness also warrant space. Number three, there were many mental health books I took out from the library or ordered online when I was at my absolute lowest mood and lowest body weight. I find it an irony upon ironies that I am writing a kind of self help book while hating the predatory nature of self help books. I can relate to that one personally. Number four, I encourage readers to eat, but we live in a world where so many can't afford food, where grocery billionaires line their pockets with everyday people while everyday people rely on food banks, where starvation is used as a weapon of war and genocide. I'm a middle class settler who can't even comprehend the nuance of these truths, and I'm writing with gaps in my understanding that will not reflect many readers' realities. It may seem hollow for me to state that I believe food is a human right when I've never experienced food insecurity. Number five, I live in a thin body. Writing from this perspective could reinforce the idea that disordered eating exists in tandem with thinness, which is false. All people, people of all body shapes and sizes, experience disordered eating. Number six, I have absolutely no qualifications that certify me to write about what I'm writing about. I am not a psychotherapist, a psychologist, a doctor, a dietitian, or a nutritionist. I am simply one hungry and depressed human being telling you the story of food, depression, and me. Depression cooking is my method for cooking, eating, and enjoying food despite what I call the weight of capitalism. I think when all we know is what life is under capitalism, it's hard to comprehend other possibilities, a world perhaps where our basic needs are met, where we're supported. And when we're depressed, it's hard to imagine a joyful life, a life full of hope, love, even a future. Surviving under capitalism is inextricably tied to capital D depression. Perhaps I might go so far as to say they are one and the same. The worst my mental health has ever been was when I was unemployed after graduating from my degree in studio art, isolated in a new city without a support network, suffering in a patriarchal romantic relationship, and using the overdraft on my bank account to make minimum payments on my credit card, despite taking bupropion, divalproex, Seroquel, and Latuda mental health medications. It still took all my courage to get out of bed, and if it was a good day, eat something. Because a lot of the time, you don't just need a better therapist or a new prescription for Zoloft. You need a living wage, affordable housing, affordable groceries, access to comprehensive health care, community support, a warm meal, and dare I say it, to dump him. You don't need to experience clinical depression or be professionally diagnosed with an eating disorder to depression cook. Being tired or burnt out, grieving a loved one, becoming a new parent, being fired from a job, or living on your own for the first time can all be reasons to turn to depression cooking as a method for survival. Eating out, convenience foods, pre prepared foods, no cooking foods, and yes, even a bag of microwave popcorn constitute depression cooking. Depression cooking is not about suppressing hunger in the ways diet culture has conditioned us to. It's, it is about greeting hunger and honoring it. It is about meeting hunger without shame. It is a method, a manifesto, and a triumph over depression, which is trying to snuff us out. I say eating 3 or more meals a day and snacking in the face of mental illness, exhaustion, or grief is the biggest affront to depression. Not today, depression, not today. Today I submit to my humanness by answering my hunger. Today I eat as a deliberate, life affirming act. Life chose me, and after careful consideration, I decided to choose it back. How does this thing work? There are some written recipes here in the traditional sense. You'll also find some stories, drawings, comics, and lists. Select recipes have two options: fewer spoons, aka lower energy, and more spoons, aka higher energy. These two categories are based on a theory called spoon theory that was developed by Christine Miserandino to help define what it feels like to live with a chronic illness. In Miserandino's case, she used the spoon theory to describe what it's like to live with lupus. The spoon represents a finite amount of energy that needs to be rationed each day to survive, depending on how much energy you might have. Imagine that each spoon represents a task. Let's say you need to shower, eat breakfast, and go to work. If you have low energy one morning because of your depression, we might say you have started the day with 5 spoons. Showering and getting dressed might take 1 spoon of energy each. Preparing and eating breakfast might take another spoon of energy, and traveling to work and putting in a full day's work will take up more spoons. Once you're out of spoons, you must rest to recharge your spoons. I'm sharing some meals that take fewer spoons and others that require more spoons. If a recipe seems like it will take too many spoons for you to try, then skip it. I didn't add preparation times because everyone takes different times to make things. There's no such thing as a standard time to scramble an egg. I try to avoid serving sizes because 1 serving of food for me might be 2 servings of food for you. We all need to eat different amounts. What I did was estimate the number of dishes that would be dirtied during food preparation, so you can decide how many dishes you'd like to wash because that's an important part of cooking. The foundation of depression cooking is the Holy Trinity: things on toast, mac and cheese, and instant ramen. The idea is that these are 3 base foods that can be spruced up with toppings and additions to increase nutrition, add variety, and boost tastiness. I believe that if you're depressed, barring allergies and food intolerances, you can rely on these 3 base foods and their variation exclusively, and you will be completely fine. These meal solutions for depressed humans were written with the younger versions of myself as the primary audience. I've compiled all the cooking tips and tricks I've picked up during the past 15 years, discovered the pure willpower and curiosity involved in survival. Because surviving under the weight of late stage capitalism and climate change while batshit crazy takes gumption. And when you're feeling low on depression resources or spoons, depression cooking is intended to be a tool to support and comfort. It is my love letter to you. The Depression Cooking Manifesto. Is it edible? Cool. Put it in your mouth. It's better to eat something than nothing. We're in the business of surviving, baby. We eat in the face of depression. Fuck you, and you, and you. Meal categories? No thanks. Breakfast for every meal of the day, we say. In the depression cooking meal plan, there are no bad foods. All foods have nutrition, and all foods feed our bellies and bodies. Individually wrapped microwave TV dinner? Bring it on. And individualist, consumerist choices are not going to solve save the planet. Large scale systemic change does. Industries are our largest polluters, not you. You are one depressed human trying to survive under the crushing weight of capitalism. You, you are doing just fine, sunshine. Mac and cheese is the very first food group. Fuck Emma W. and any white vegan who will shame you into believing otherwise. Shame will get us nowhere. Remember to worship the Holy Trinity, the mac and cheese, the instant ramen, and the holy toast. This is the foundation. Start here, and the meal possibilities are absolutely endless. When too depressed to chew, make a smoothie. When too depressed to blend, drink an Ensure. Remember, a bowl of popcorn will sometimes suffice. Cheese and crackers will always do. A bowl of ice cream, too. Is it edible? Cool. Put it in your mouth. It's better to eat something than nothing. We're in the business of surviving, baby. Chapter 1. Everyone is expecting a self help book. Since this is a self help book of sorts, here are some general and food based. Oh, I'm sorry. There was a bit of a weird text format thing. Since this is a self help book of sorts, here are some general and food based, they're connected, I promise, self help tips to start us off. It is okay to eat until you are full. It is okay if you're not chill, and it's okay to cringe when people ask if you're chill. When you are hungry, eat. Your body is not indicating to you that you are thirsty. Our bodies are smart. They tell us when we need to eat. Listen to them. You can cook most of your food in the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 25 minutes, and the chances are it will be perfectly fine. Heck, you can cook most of your food on medium heat, Mark 5, on your stove top, and chances are it'll be perfectly fine. Despite what diet culture tells you, you need carbohydrates. Eat them. Your brain functions on carbohydrates. If you're having difficulty eating and meals are feeling stressful, it's okay to do things to help make it more enjoyable. You could light a candle and eat under its light, watch a movie or TV while you eat, or listen to relaxing music while you eat. You can always reach out to a friend or a family member to cook a meal for you. Eating ready made food is a totally okay way to feed yourself. This includes takeout, delivery, and canned and frozen meals. Think about foods that excite you and make you happy. Give yourself permission to eat them. Set aside time to do food prep when you have more energy or spoons, like hard boiling eggs. Never underestimate the power of a hard boiled egg. Put the laundry detergent in food first, clothes in second. If you simply cannot stomach spending an afternoon at the laundromat while men hit on you and you pretend to not understand English to avoid them, and you have no more clean underwear, try hand washing a couple of emergency pairs in your bathroom sink. If things get desperate on the clean underwear front, for any reason, you can try flipping your underwear inside out and wearing them again. If your cutting board is dirty and you simply do not have the energy to wash it to use it again, flip it over and use the clean side. You do not have to wash water glasses every time you use them. You can reuse them. You do not have to wash tea mugs every time you use them. You can rinse and reuse them. If you've had a few alcoholic drinks, try drinking a glass of water before you go to sleep. It'll make all the difference. That's another one I know very well. If you're not a particularly stinky person and showering feels too difficult, you don't need to shower every day. You could shower every other day. Ask someone you trust if you stink or not. Eating alone? Try video calling a friend or family member to virtually eat with you. If you're anxious about cooking meat and getting food poisoning, get a meat thermometer. Most recipes indicate internal temperatures as opposed to cooking times. Wherever you live, every oven or stove will be different. Their temperatures will be different. They may not be level, and it may be impossible to make an omelette on some. This does not mean you're bad at making omelets. It takes time to adjust and to learn the quirks of each stove in each place you live. You might move 10 times in your 20s. Sometimes the stove will be great. Sometimes they might be a hot plate and a toaster oven because there's no stove. Never sleep with your ex, despite whatever story you might tell yourself about why you think it might be a good idea. It is not. Just don't do it. If your almost 30-year-old boyfriend looks you in the eye and tells you he's hungry, it's not your job to cook him a meal. If, when eating the meal you cooked for him, your almost 30-year-old boyfriend drops tomato sauce on his shirt and looks you in the eye and asks, "What do I do?" It is not your job to take off his shirt and rinse out the stain and bring him a fresh shirt. Do not cater to performed incompetence, even if you were socialized to. That is simply enabling bad behavior. It is not helping. Baby wipes are an excellent solution to wiping bodily fluids off your body in the moment without leaving a sticky residue. If you are in the middle of one of your many mental breakdowns, do not attempt to read the bell jar. You're allowed to take sick days where you truly rest and don't secretly answer emails from home while doing the laundry. Have you discovered faster boiling? Try boiling water in an electric kettle first, then pouring the water into a pot on the stove. Coffee can suppress your appetite. Try drinking coffee after your meals instead of before to avoid this. A meal replacement drink can do wonders when you're not up for eating or cooking. There is no such thing as clean eating. Unless it is covered in dirt, food is not generally dirty. There's no such thing as good food and bad food. Sometimes adhering to a vegan or vegetarian diet can be difficult when you're depressed and food options already feel limited. If you're vegan or vegetarian, it's okay to be flexible and give yourself a break. Sometimes these diets can be good fodder for disordered eating when you're depressed. Nauseous? Try ginger tea or candy. Eat something pickled. Stay hydrated. Mint is another great option. It's okay to stay in, even when it's a Friday night and other people are out. There's nothing about a Friday or Saturday night that says you need to do something cool. You don't need to be anxious about being invited somewhere. Staying in and eating mac and cheese while listening to Billie Holiday is pretty cool. It's okay not to hit all the prescribed milestones you're ostensibly supposed to hit at certain ages. You might not have a partner when everyone else does, or finish school when everyone else does. You might get fired from your first real job while others are secure with benefits and promotions. You might not buy a house or a car, or get married, or have a baby or two, or go on vacation to Mexico. Staying in and eating mac and cheese while listening to Billie Holiday is pretty cool. If you put large, expensive items on the flatbed of your grocery cart, it is completely plausible that you might forget to put those items on the conveyor belt to be scanned at checkout and fly through the parking lot without paying for them and secretly high five yourself. Oh. When at the self checkout, it is completely plausible that you might accidentally put in the code for sunflower seeds when weighing cashews. If you ignore your hunger cues long enough, say 25 years, it is completely possible that your body might not feel hungry the way other people's bodies feel hungry. Even if this is not the case, it is completely fine to only eat foods that entice you for the taste, to remind your body that food is good and tastes good, to reignite your hunger cues. You've got to taste the food you're cooking while you're cooking it and adjust the seasoning to taste. You're allowed to dream about food. If you're if you eat lunch and finish lunch, start a break, and then realize shortly after that you are hungry again, it is okay to, yes, eat again. You can line your baking sheet with parchment paper when baking something in the oven and throw out the parchment paper afterward. This will cut back on baking sheet scrubbing when you are washing dishes. If you are cooking a meal for someone, it is okay to ask if they can contribute by washing the dishes. You do not have to do all the labor alone. No one is asking you to be a saint. You are a depressed human who is tired. If you find evenly coating pans in oil stressful, you can try a spray oil. If you share a kitchen, your roommates are likely to break a lot of your kitchen supplies. Perhaps 5 out of 6 wine glasses your mom bought for for you during one semester. Maybe even the glass insert for your French press 3 separate times. A kettle, bowls, plates, cups, mugs. Don't get attached to things. They are just things. Thrift shop. When you lend someone a book, it is unlikely it will be returned to you. Consider it a gift. That's a really, really hard one for me. If you give someone food in your reusable container, it is unlikely the container will be returned to you. Consider it a gift. Don't rub your eyes after cutting chilies. Don't pick your nose after cutting chilies. Even if it's satisfying to get some end of day boogies while your food simmers, it's hard to get that burn out of your nasal passages. Wash your hands first. Not everyone's going to like you, but that doesn't mean you have to change to be the kind of person they will like. It just means they don't like you. That's a big one. Do not compare the amount of sex you're having to the amount of sex others are having. Not everything needs to be compared. Do not compare the amount of art you're making to the amount of art others are making. Not everything needs to be compared. Do not compare the amount of food you're eating to the amount of food others are eating. Not everything needs to be compared. You were destined to live. You live in a world where mango season exists, for God's sakes. Just because no one noticed, it doesn't mean it wasn't significant. Despite how alone you might feel, chances are there's at least one person in the world who feels the same way you do. It is totally possible to love others while still figuring out how to love yourself. Girly Pop is writing a little too close to home for me. It's okay to be the only thing you accomplish. It's okay if the only thing you accomplish today is eating. Feeding yourself is an accomplishment. Goddamn dishes. I can't say I've overcome the hurdle of doing the goddamn dishes. When you've got to eat every day, I'm going to hold your hand while I say this. I'm so sorry to admit that you've got to do the dishes every day too. I don't have a magic depressing cooking fix for this. You cannot reason with adults to wash dishes. Try dating a Twitter account masquerading as a man overflowing with 280 character revolutionary hot takes, but who also refuses to do the dishes or take out the trash. I'm going to hold your hand once more while I say this. There are roommates who wash the dishes and those who do not wash the dishes. The kind you live with is the luck of the draw. I am so sorry to state the obvious. I am so privileged to say I no longer live with roommates who do not wash the dishes. I no longer scrape moldy and dried macaroni and cheese out of a pot on the stove and soak it so that it is usable again, or spend my sick day at home with diarrhea while I catch up on a week's worth of household dishes, or return home from a 3 day conference only to have to clean up the aftermath of a party I didn't even attend. I share a tiny galley kitchen with Jeffrey. When I am absolutely at my wits' end with dishes and can't muster the energy, Jeffrey washes them while I read in bed. I think if you have lived in households where the dishes fell to you, the frustration can feel cumulative. Maybe the dishes were washed along gendered and racial lines. Maybe when you see a full sink full and a counter piled high with plates, a panic attack starts bubbling. Maybe it feels like you will be washing dishes for 10 years because you already have been. Here are my tips. Try washing dishes in the morning. I feel more capable in the morning and washing the dishes then it feels more manageable. Listen to some music that pumps you up and makes you feel good, or try listening to your favorite podcast. Change into comfortable clothes so that you can move your body comfortably. When the dishes are done, ogle at your carefully stacked dish drying rack. Allow your eyes to relish in the crumb-free countertops. Offer yourself a word of affirmation. I am so proud of you for washing the dishes. I think it is fair to say that most people who hate dishes the most, hate doing dishes the most, are the people who had to do them as a chore. And it can be extra frustrating to people to wash after other people if they had a large family. I I didn't have a large family, but I definitely did all of the dirty things in my house growing up. I would wash the dishes and wash the toilets and wash the tubs and do the laundry for the whole house. Those were chores that I had to do. And I remember getting to an age where it started to frustrate me more than anything that I was having to clean up after other people who were supposed to be adults, who were supposed to be able to take care of themselves. And that was probably one of the biggest drawn out fights I ever had with my parents, specifically my male parent, because I didn't want to do them anymore. And I didn't think it was fair. And my parents, specifically my male parent, who was also the one in charge of disciplining and raising us, even though it was my mother who had wanted the kids and who had gone over the top to have kids with a man who did not want to have kids with her, but wanted to fuck her anyway. My male parent was not a good parent, who did not know how to raise kids, who did not know how to raise two children who were brought up feminine and female. So when challenged, the answer was never to explain why. The answer was corporal punishment, sometimes cruel punishment. And growing into adulthood and having to live with other people who came with their own traumas, it made it really difficult to live with other people who were unkind and unconsiderate and unwilling to adapt and collaborate and work together. And I think the worst part was that for so many years, me personally, I was undiagnosed. I had a lot of undiagnosed mental illness. I hadn't done a lot of real therapy and work on myself. And I didn't know how to communicate with other people effectively yet. I found myself very angry all the time about almost everything. So it might have been easier for me to use paper plates for a while rather than just do the dishes by hand, or to drastically reduce the number of dishes I had so that it was only one dish being washed and I didn't have to feel bad. If I ran out, it was just the one and it didn't feel like the end of the world, because it would feel a lot worse to have to do an entire sink of dishes rather than have to eat out of a paper plate or use a food that was cooked in a prepared dish that was already its own plate, if that makes sense. Not having to deal with that is a perfectly valid um, way to handle not wanting to do the dishes. So that's another option that maybe the author did not think to include. And I know that also comes with its own sort of hangups because, like, people start to think, oh, I don't want to use paper plates because paper plates are wasteful and paper plates add to pollution and all of these different things. But kind of like what was said in the manifesto, you're one person and don't feel bad for using paper plates. Um, don't feel like you have to have two sets of dishes just in case somebody comes by. It's okay to use paper plates too. It's okay to only have one glass and one mug and one set of silverware. Do what you can to manage your own processes. Don't feel like you have to do things for others if you can barely do them for yourself. It's okay. You're not selfish for taking care of yourself and knowing your limitations. Then, if anybody else thinks that, fuck them, they're not worth your time. Chapter 2. Sensitive Kids. I hear sensitive kids make the best depressed adults. I've been told they're also terribly impressionable and believe everything the adults around them tell them, including what they say about food. I wasn't deprived of food for lack of access to food. I grew up in a middle class suburban household of six, which included my parents, my older sister, my triplet brother, and me. And there was an abundance of food. When my sister was 9 months old, my parents were surprised to find out three more babies were on the way. We were four babies in diapers in a two-bedroom apartment with the first few years of our lives. For the first few years of our lives until my parents bought a four-bedroom house on the Victoria Park border of New York and Scarborough. My parents are immigrants from Mumbai, India, and Karachi, Pakistan, with roots originating in Goa, India. What we ate was influenced by the oral recipes handed to my parents by their mothers and aunties and grandmothers. What was on sale at the grocery store, magazine recipe clippings from the dentist's office, handwritten recipes from neighbors, cooking show recipes on television, and of course, the cultural richness of North York and Scarborough. Oh, it was York that she said earlier. I'm so sorry for that. North York. That's an easy mistake, I think. While our immediate neighborhood and the Catholic elementary school we attended were predominantly white, a quick jaunt over Victoria Park into Scarborough revealed what I knew was true, that there were many racialized people in this world, and that perhaps if I attended a different school, I wouldn't be embarrassed by my gray knees and leg hair in gym class. Our fridge in the kitchen was overflowing with leftovers carefully packaged in reusable containers and repurposed yogurt tubs, mostly cooked, organized, and managed by my mother. On the table, a pineapple or cantaloupe leaned against a bowl of apples and bananas, and pears and clementines, and pomegranates and kiwis, and sometimes custard apples, mostly replenished by my father. Often there was a case of mangoes slowly ripening on the floor in the dining room during mango season. Sometimes an overripe papaya sat on the counter, desperate to be cut, nearly forgotten in the comings and goings, frothing at the mouth with white and blue mold. I could reach Value Mart or Food Basics on the foot with a pocket full of babysitting money. No frills too, if I got permission to walk that far. There were trips to Costco in our gray minivan, which was later replaced by a brown minivan. I loved pulling up in the parking lot at Karachi Bazaar, six brown people emerging from a brown van to enter a brown grocery store. I recognized the poetry even then. My stomach grumbles with jealousy of my childhood self, a time when my expenses were covered by my parents, the cost of living was lower, and eating out regularly or eating delicious takeout from restaurants in Scarborough and North York wasn't a distant dream. I loved walking to the window in the back of Karachi Bazaar, where an uncle in a banyan crouched over a large handi and spooned hot chicken biryani into foam containers for $6. There was Nassar Foods, where we would go to get pita and mangoes and my dad's coveted apricot jam. There was China Cottage, where we would get sweet and sour fish with rice, fried squid, beef Hakka noodles, and especially and equally spicy, crunchy, and greasy green beans. Samosa King Embassy for vegetable samosas, 5 for $1. Paper bag glistening and translucent with oil. A side of fresh dolka with green chilies, Frederick for shrimp or chicken pakoras, and impossibly red fried rice, a deep fried banana with vanilla ice cream for dessert, annapurnas for crispy jalebis, chum chums, ragsula, kachukalti covered in silver, orange laddus cut in half to share, and syrup soaked gulab jamun, nasibs for shawarma and falafel with extra white sauce, pickled radishes, and tabbouleh, Laxmi for spicy mutton rolls, Ars's Bakery for flaky pistachio baklava, Perfect Chinese for dim sum, hargao, shumai, crispy taro puffs, egg tarts, and mango pudding on special occasions. Oh, excuse me. Satay on the road for Thai toast, pad thai, and mango salad. And of course, there was Moti Mahal on Gerard for the highly sought after chana bhatura with sliced onions, pickled carrots, sweet mango lassi for us, salty for dad. As you see, as you can see, the problem was not a lack of food. By the morning in the sixth grade, when I woke up in bewilderment and shame to a small pooling of my own menstrual blood, it was clear that the issue was in the narrative. My inherited food narrative withheld my own permission to eat all this gorgeous food in the portions I needed. There are three lines my parents often repeated, presumably to keep their children's voracious appetite in control, as diet culture so instructs. Sometimes they slosh around in my mind when I'm cooking or tumble against my forehead like pre-distinctive brain freeze when I'm about to feed myself a bowl of ice cream. Oh God, reading I pre-read these and I'm already upset because I've heard these ones too. When you think you're hungry, you're often actually thirsty. Try drinking a glass of water instead. Never eat until you're full. Always just until eat until you're satisfied. Serve yourself on a small plate so you don't overeat. I couldn't say that the first stories I began to tell myself about food came from these three lines. All I know is that by the sixth grade I was hungry most of the time, and instead of doing what would appear to be most natural, eat when I was hungry, I felt shame and fear. I was deeply afraid of my own hunger. Maybe this was because of diet culture, or maybe it was simply the guilt some depressed kids feel for simply being alive. My hunger was a signifier of my aliveness, which seemed inherently bad. In her novel, The God of Small Things, Arundhati Roy uses the symbol of a moth to describe shame. When the character Rahel is a child and she feels she has done something wrong, a moth with usually dense dorsal tufts lands on her heart, spreading its wings. When she feels safe, the moth lets go of her heart. As a child, hunger was like a moth on my heart. It indicated that I had done something wrong. I was simultaneously afraid of hunger and felt shame for experiencing it. While food was the only way to eliminate this feeling, the moth spreading its wings shamed me from answering the call to eat. When I imagine this moth and its wings enveloping my heart, I recall it landing on my aorta when I had a thought about my body, like when I would have my period and was way too afraid to use tampons, so I would skip swim practice by saying I had a stomach ache. Or when I quit the swim team, when I looked at my reflection in the change room and realized my black pubic hair, though carefully trimmed around the bikini line, was visible through my thin, unlined Walmart swimsuit. If I said I wanted a fancy, lined, non Walmart swimsuit that could possibly block out the power of my pubes from the swim store, that could be construed by my economical immigrant parents as greedy. All the white blonde kids have seen my pubes already anyway. The only solution was to quit. When I said I was full and didn't want any more food, would people know that I was still hungry? Was I being greedy? Was wanting more food like wanting an expensive swimsuit? If I wanted two cookies, I took one. If I wanted a whole banana, I cut it in half and put one piece away in the fridge to eat later. When I needed a whole dinner, I served myself a miniature portion carefully arranged on a small plate and put myself to bed hungry. I learned to be afraid of my own hunger, and for whatever reason, however the narrative formed, I justified restricting my food by voicing it to myself, however wordlessly, that I was not worthy of the food necessary to satisfy my own hunger. I had decadent dreams of indulging in my favorite foods. I would wake in the middle of the night, stomach growling, ashamed of what I had dreamt as the moth rearranged its wings across my heart. I had already eaten enough during the day. Why was I waking up hungry in the middle of the night? Maybe I was thirsty. I'm gonna mute myself for just a second. I need to blow my nose. During this time, I had a desperate desire for space and individualization. Let me read that again. I read it wrong. During this time, I had a desperate desire for space and individuation. I shared a house with 5 loving, opinionated, political, and strong tempered people. They loved to debate everything from the right way to brew green tea to the benefits and pitfalls of water privatization. The household was a perfect pairing for Menezes, my father's side, and Francis, my mother's side, two bloodlines known to put up a lively debate. The dinner table was full of strong, contradicting convictions, all stated at the same time and all at once. Sometimes it can be easy to lose your voice in a large, bustling Indian household, not wanting to contribute yet another opinion to persuade the others. Perhaps you are not good at persuading anyway. I shared many things with my triplet sister. The rules that gender laid out for us meant that there was a separation between our triplet brother and us, the 2 girls. We sisters were painfully inseparable and often mistaken for each other. We shared a bedroom outfitted with 2 identical IKEA single beds, 2 identical IKEA desks, and 2 identical IKEA dressers, so that our room resembled a sitcom set. We had similar grades. Mine were lower, especially in math, and general appearance that had us confused for the other frequently. I was hairier, similar voices, mine was higher pitched, and a shared, mostly hand me down wardrobe, a friend group that was teetering on abandoning us for the popular girls, and a shoebox of secret menstrual products that were kept in our closet only to be referenced in hushed voices. I had many reoccurring dreams with my triplet sister and me in them, somehow always nightmares. In one of the dreams, I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I washed my hands in the dark with the door open, only illuminated by the night light in the hallway. I stole a glance in the mirror and realized I couldn't see my reflection. I opened my eyes wider and leaned closer into the mirror, only to see my sister's face emerging from the shadows, gazing back at me. I would usually wake myself with a small shriek. It was not her face that frightened me, but the way she was looking at me, with pity, as if she thought that I didn't properly exist altogether, that I was just a shadow version of her, a less pretty, less smart version. The version who had to secretly trim her unibrow with scissors in the bathroom. By the spring of the 6th grade, something unexpected and magical happened. I became good at something, better even than my triplet sister. It was cross-country running. Not only did I become faster than all the girls on the grade 6 team, I became faster than all of the boys on the grade 6 team too, except the top two runners, Cedric and Michael. I loved passing Jake at practice, and the third fastest grade 6 boy who lived around the corner from us and used to egg our house. This skill gave me permission to practice on my own without my siblings. I was faster than them after all. I got permission to run in the evenings and on the weekends, and nobody asked to come along. I could go for long runs and then come home and have long showers, all by myself, nobody to debate with. While running would later become an unhealthy component in my disordered eating, in grade 6 it meant freedom. It gave me room to think, room to breathe on my own for the first time, to feel like a separate, independent human with my own pair of lungs. In the 7th grade, my mom let me skip school one morning. We stood in line at the opening of a new Walmart so I could buy a 1 gigabyte iPod Nano with my babysitting money at a door crasher opening day price. I picked up a pair of earbuds, put my iPod in a plastic Ziploc bag, and tucked it into my sports bra. Now I could listen to Coldplay on repeat while running by myself. I learned from our coach that when you're doing high cardio, your body burns calories at a higher rate. She encouraged us to eat more. This knowledge allowed me to eat a little more than the measly amount I was eating previously because an adult told me to and I trusted her. What did I lean into? Bread, more specifically toast. Holy Toast Almighty. In the holy trinity of depression cooking, toast is the father. I am a former Catholic, after all, and a triplet. I like trinities. Toast predates instant convenience foods like mac and cheese and instant ramen, and is an old school depression food. The idea is that a piece of bread is the base food, and you can add pre cooked, no cook, or low energy cooked toppings. Bread gets a bad rap in the diet and health food world. From my understanding, unless you are gluten intolerant, celiac, or have a wheat allergy, there is nothing particularly bad or unhealthy about eating bread. You can eat it every day if you want to. I do. I first learned about the beauty of spruced up toast from observing my mother on weekends in my preteen years. She would slice cheddar cheese and tomatoes and layer them on a slice of bread, which she would complete with fresh cracked pepper before placing it in the toaster oven to become perfectly toasted and melty. She used to call these open faced sandwiches. I call them things on toast. Some of these ideas are so simple, and you've already eaten them half a million times. Some of these are a little fancier and require a few more spoons. The formula is simple. 1. Toast a piece of bread. 2. Put stuff on it. If there's cheese involved and you'd like to melt it, reverse the order of the formula. 1. Put stuff on bread. 2. Toast in toaster oven. I got my first toaster oven from the thrift store, and it cost me about $1 per year that it lasted. My roommates and I used to turn it on with a screwdriver because the plastic knobs were broken off. I look back very fondly on my first toaster oven and the meals I depression cooked in it. I know a lot of people now prefer air fryers to toaster ovens. Whatever your heart desires, baby. Things on toast works wonderful in the air fryer too. This is one of the first actual recipes in the book. And because I want to minimize reading things that are recipes from the book, I'm going to skip it. This is another one of those examples where it's really a good idea to get the book yourselves and read it yourself and practice the things in it yourself. And if you go into the About tab on my Twitch page or into the comments of the YouTube video after it's finished published, you can find links to pre-order the book or get a copy yourself using my affiliate links. And I would really love it if you did that because A, it would be helping me just a little bit, I promise, and 2, it would be helping the author and the publishers and keeping writing a valued societal contribution. So please, 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 please do that. If not using my affiliate links, that's fine. I understand. I don't know why, but I won't hold it against you. But definitely get a copy if you can, or at least go to your local library and get a copy there. And if the book isn't there yet, ask them to pick it up. Support your libraries too. I am going to read the combination choices, so I think they're great combinations. Sorry, there is now a plane outside. Give me a second. Oh, the joys of living in a city. Peanut butter plus honey, jam, sliced bananas, Nutella, and chocolate chips. Very yummy. Mashed avocado plus a drizzle of olive oil, sprinkle of flaky salt and pepper, goat cheese, chili flake, sliced tomatoes, sunny side up egg, cooked bacon, sliced red onion or pickled red onion, drizzle of balsamic reduction. Yes, please. Cream cheese and sliced cucumber, capers, fresh dill, smoked salmon or trout, and pickled onion. I'm not much of a one for capers personally, but I know why a lot of people like them. Did that one. A can of flaked light tuna mixed with a tablespoon of mayonnaise, plain or flavored garlic, chipotle, or sriracha are my favorites. Sliced tomato, sliced cheese, handful of greens. Very good. Here are some more combinations. Butter, cheddar cheese, sliced tomato, and pepper. Add toppings, then toast. Store-bought hummus, bean sprouts. Store-bought hummus, hard-boiled egg, arugula, salt and pepper. Pesto, sliced mozzarella cheese, and sliced tomato. That's basically a caprese salad on toast. Store-bought baba ganoush with sliced tomato, butter, chopped dates, and honey. Also really good. I would personally add cinnamon. Mayonnaise, cooked bacon, sliced tomato, and lettuce. Basically an open peeled. Goat cheese, sliced peach, and prosciutto. Yum, 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 yum. Brie cheese, sliced Granny Smith apples, or any other sour tart apples. Fried halloumi, which is a kind of cheese. Sliced tomato, pepper, drizzle, balsamic reduction. Sliced focaccia cheese with tomato, basil, olive oil, drizzle, balsamic reduction, and flaky salt. Again, pretty much a caprese, a little bit more jazzed up. Red pepper jelly, sharp old cheddar cheese. Oh my god, that is so good. A can of smoked oysters with cream cheese mixed in. I don't like fish or shellfish either, but those are some very good toast toppings, and I love stuff on toast. One of my very best friends when I still lived in the Pacific Northwest was somebody I met at a comic convention dressed as Dean Winchester from Supernatural. Her name was Bean. She was one of the first non binary people that I ever really became friends with. She uses she and they pronouns, so don't beat me up if I say she or they. And she had two little ones, two girls, and her partner, her husband, was in the military. He just joined the Marines, in fact, and she lived alone with her kids and was not originally from the Pacific Northwest. She was from the Southwest, if I remember right. I say all this because I came to live with Bean and their two kids after I finished college. And while I lived with them, I acted a little bit like their in house cook and a light housekeeping slash babysitting. Bean had POTS, POTS, which is a heart condition. She didn't know that they had that yet. It was something that had been misdiagnosed as migraines. Um, the kind of migraines that make your eyes get blurry, like you see spots in your eyes whenever you get up suddenly. That was just what they assumed was going on. And sometimes the headaches were so bad um, that they like couldn't do daily tasks. And they were alone. They didn't live with any family. Uh, the only family she had was her husband, who was currently off in the military. That was why I chose to move in with them, with the three of them. Uh, I needed somewhere to stay, and my apartment lease had just gotten up. And I was in a place where I was waiting to hear back from whether or not I was getting recruited for a job. And because I didn't know what my situation was going to be like, I needed somewhere to go, and I didn't want to move back in with my parents. I had already gotten to a point in my life where I knew that I wasn't healthy living with them. I had to live with them while I was in community college, and I hated it. Every single year that I was there, I hated it. So the idea of having to move back in with them right after I finished university made me really sick to my stomach. And Bean told me, why don't you move in with me? I know I have kids, and I know that's hard for you specifically, given your history, but I know that I would love to have you, and it would be so great to have somebody else to be around so that it wasn't just me by myself with kids. And I had another friend like that before I started going to college, who was a single parent. Well, no, who was a single mother and had a son, and her husband was also in the military. And while I didn't live with that friend, I spent a lot of time texting and being in chat rooms with her. And it felt like this was a chance for me to show some kindness for another person in a similar situation. So I came to move in with Bean and their two kids, and I stayed with them for, I want to say, 5 months, 4 or 5 months. It doesn't feel like very much time at all, and it really wasn't. But at the same time, I felt like I got so much out of living with this person and their kids that I hadn't had the opportunity of doing before. Now, Bean and I are two very different people in the way that we were raised, in our communication styles, and in how we view the world. I think that is something that a lot of people eventually find out from living with partners and other roommates and such. But Bean was unique in that it was such a short period of time and we didn't know each other as well as we might have prior to that. But we knew each other very well by the end of it. I look at their life now and I'm so proud of how much they've accomplished and what they've done with their life and the way that the kids have grown up. I don't talk to them at all. I'm pretty sure they don't even remember me. But that's okay because I remember them. I remember living in that house. I remember making food for these kids and sitting down and eating meals with the three of them and me. I remember being so impressed by some of the things that I just cooked very, very offhandedly, I want to say. I had a lot of experience cooking for myself and cooking with what I had and building meals with what I had. And Bean wasn't much of a cook. And that's not something that I hold against them at all. And I think it's definitely one of those things where either you cook because you have to, or you cook because you love cooking. And I think that I fell into the second category and Bean fell into the first category. And one of the things that Bean did a lot was toast. And I worried about them all the time because it would just be toast. It would be toast, sometimes with butter, not always, but just dry toast. And when I heard that and I looked at how thin they were, because they were very slender and very small boned kind of person, not as small boned as some people I've known since then. But at the time I remember thinking that this woman, this human being, not woman because they're non-binary, this person, this non-binary person who had two children was so slender and had no weight on their body at all and was only eating toast when they were hungry but making sure their kid was fed. And it made me so nervous about her. I was constantly saying, Bean, Bean, toast is not a meal, Bean. You need to eat more food, Bean. Bean, please eat more food, Bean. Bean, I will make you food if you're hungry, Bean. And they would be, it's okay, I like toast. I like toast. I don't need anything else. And I would say repeatedly, I would say, Bean, that is not a meal, Bean. You need to add something to the toast, Bean. Peanut butter or a slice of cheese or something. But you can't just have toast, Bean. You need to have something else. So I started making sure that Bean had more than just toast. Because while it's very important that you have carbohydrates for your brain, you also need protein and you also need fats. Fats are important because if you don't have fats, certain vitamins cannot be properly utilized by your body. So you need to have fats in order to get those vitamins and minerals. And protein is what makes your muscles work and function and repair themselves. Proteins are the building blocks of the body. So I would sometimes make her grilled cheese sandwiches. And sometimes it would be with tomato soup. And sometimes I would make her quesadillas or bean and cheese burritos with or without rice. They were simple, but they were still small because my darling friend had a very tiny tummy because they spent so much time being so focused about making sure the kids eat and usually eating whatever the kids wouldn't finish. I think that is a very parent thing to do. You don't want to waste the food, so you'll eat what they don't eat, even if it's not the most appetizing looking food. But I made sure not only were the kids eating something that the kids wanted to eat, the kids were comfortable eating, but to also challenge them, to get them to try new things, and to encourage them to try new things, because trying new things is good. You might not like something because of the texture, you might not like something because of the smell, but maybe you try it and it's not so bad. Or maybe you need to have it prepared a different way. These are all things that I encouraged. And I made sure that my friend, who only ate toast for the longest time, whenever they made food for themselves, didn't have to only eat toast, but could also still occasionally have toast by themselves if that's what they wanted. And they made sure to tell me when we moved away from each other because they got invited to move across country to a new housing complex because their spouse, their husband, got um, stationed somewhere. We both ended up having to move at the same time. I got into my recruitment program and went to go learn on site, and Bean and the kids moved to the other side of the country. And it was such a sad day. I was in tears. The youngest couldn't even be outside. The eldest stood on the side with with Bean, and I told myself I wasn't gonna look. I wasn't gonna look, but then I did, and I could see them crying. And I opened the door and I let them come over to me, and we hugged each other and we said goodbye. And it was such a wonderful memory on some of the harder days I had because I spent a long time having a really hard time with young children. And I finally got to be around some kids who I didn't immediately find myself unhappy being around. And I was missed, and that made me happy. But being told me that one of the first things they unpacked in their new place, in their kitchen, was a toaster oven. And when was told that story, I laughed really hard because my friend still thought about me whenever they made toast after all of the ribbing that I gave them for the longest time. And they were so stubborn. They were a very stubborn person, even if they were a little quiet. They were a quiet person. They kept their stubbornness inside by being silent. And I was an opinionated person who was very loud and talked over people sometimes when they got excited. And we were two very good friends. And I was so glad to have been their friend in a very hard part of both of our lives. personal anecdotal story number two. Oh, don't be sorry, Fuzzy. I haven't lost Bean. Bean and I just don't talk as much as we used to. Um, Bean's kids are all grown up. They're high school kids now, and we're both in our 40s. And Bean is a certified um, dog trainer. And when they were first thinking about becoming a dog trainer, they asked me if it was something they should try. And I said, why the hell not, buddy? Why the hell not? Try. What's the worst that could happen? You are so passionate about taking care of your dog and taking care of your cats because they got cats first. And that was another thing. They were feeding their cat raw food, which I support. I completely stand behind and support the raw diet. I think it's incredible and an important uh, way to do if you have the ability to do so. And there's a lot more easier ways to do it now than there was like 10, 15 years ago if you didn't already have that knowledge or if you didn't grow up in like a farming sort of like livestock like household type stuff. Anyway, that cat ate better than she did on most days. It was like in the tier list, it was children, cat, my friend Bean. Um, and then she got the dog, the first dog, and was so passionate about maintaining a healthy diet for the dog and walking and training and teaching the dog and learning about how to be a good pet owner and spending so much time with all of this research and this credible experience and then asking themselves if they wanted to try it. I said, yeah, fuck yeah, buddy, do it. Go out there and do whatever you need to do and succeed. Don't be afraid to try. And very successful trainer, like award winning for the area that they live in, sort of trainer, has a very successful, very reputable business. And I am so fucking proud of my friend. I am so fucking proud every single time I see pictures and stories about them and the dog or the kids and how much they've grown and how much they look like their parents. It is so crazy how much of both of their parents are in those kids' faces and seeing the way they've grown up from the little kids they were into the teenagers and the adults they're becoming. It's been a journey to watch. I wish I could be there. I think about that a lot. I think about Bean and those kids a lot and the little tiny role that I played and how I contributed to the story, to the narrative, just by existing in that tiny little window of time. Because, like, those kids got really passionate into pets and animals because of me and because of my two cats, because I had two cats who have now passed on. And that makes me sad too, thinking about that. I'm gonna try really hard not to cry anymore. Oh, jeez. But I was teaching them how to be careful about how to be around dogs and cats, specifically cats, because that's what I had. I'm gonna mute myself again, really. Just grab. Very important skills like how to pay attention to body language and how to watch the way they play and to try different things and very important things like hands. Hands are not toys for pets. You should not be teaching your cats and your dogs to play with your hands. That's how biting happens, that's how scratching happens. You don't teach kids how to use hands for toys for pets. That was a very important lesson, a very important lesson that I taught them. And I taught them that you have to clean up after them, which means feeding them and making sure their bowls are clean and they have fresh water and that their boxes are clean and that their paws are clean. Very important things that they would not have had the experience with yet at that age in an age appropriate way if it weren't for me. And another memory I have specifically with the kids is that they started playing kitty cat game with me, where they would come in and pretend to be cats and groom each other and play and sleep next to each other. And they would do this nearby my cats. And I remember doing similar things with my sister when I was little because my grandmother had a cat and a dog, and I became obsessed with that cat. And that was what got me into loving cats as much as I did because of my grandmother and her cat. So the fact that I got to see my friend's two daughters, play kitty cats with me because of the fact that I had cats and they grew to love cats, and it was because of me. Again, this is a person who did not like being around small children because of some personal shit at home. Stop it, blurs. Personal shit at home in my home life growing up. Stop being blurry. Come on. There we go. I got to be exposed to a couple of really cute, sweet, well behaved kids. They weren't always well behaved, but mostly very well behaved compared to what I had been exposed to. I got to change their lives and they got to change mine. And that was really important to me. It made me feel like I wasn't a terrible monster. I spent a long time thinking that because of the things that my mother and my sister said about me, that I couldn't be good around kids and that I wasn't good for kids or that I didn't have anything of value to teach kids. So being around those kids and being okay was relieving. And I learned after the fact that Bean didn't always agree with me and how I talked to their kids and behaved with their kids. But they were never mean to me about them. And I learned to be more courteous and kind and respectful being around her kids. She did not like the swearing happening around the kids, so I got very good at not swearing around children because of her kids. And I learned to be gentler, which was something I hadn't necessarily been the same way until then. It was such a small window of time, but I'm really glad that I had the opportunity. And going back further, back to where this all started from, this whole rambling story about Bean and the toast, but also realizing now part of the reason that Bean was only eating toast for themselves was because they were just so low energy. They couldn't muster the energy to cook for themselves on a lot of days. And a lot of times they would do pre-packaged foods, prepared foods. Excuse me. Um, Eating these pre-prepared, pre-cooked, prepared foods, feeding them to their kids, made them feel a lot of shame and guilt. And seeing that and acknowledging that and realizing that now that comes from a place of having chronic illness and not necessarily knowing how to handle that or what to do. Feeding is important. Fed is best. That's a big one. And it's really important with children, especially because children can be so picky when it comes to food. And that was something that she pushed back on me a lot, was that I shouldn't make the kids eat things they didn't want to eat. And I understood that because I had that happen to me by my grandparents when I was little. They made me eat things I did not want to eat, and I would get so repulsed by what I was being forced to eat that I would make myself sick, either with the anxiety of not wanting to eat those foods or being forced to eat them and just wanting to spit them out and being punished if I spat them out at the table. So having to be secretive with how I spat them out and then being discovered because kids are not as secretive as they think they are. And I would try to get away to the bathroom to spit it out, and I got stopped doing that. And I would spit it into my uh, napkin, and I got stopped from doing that. And I got stopped from standing up and spitting it out into the trash can. All these things. My mother, when she found out, got really upset with my grandmother and told her that if I didn't want to eat what she prepared me, that I could eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or I could eat a bologna and cheese sandwich, or I could eat chicken nuggets, and it's okay because fed is best. We can practice trying new foods when we're a little older and we're a little less anxious about things and more interested in trying new things. And I remember doing a similar thing with my stepson when he was a kid. We were at the grocery store one time and we were walking by the bulk foods, and I pointed out that there were pistachios in the bulk foods and that I didn't think that was something that usually happened because pistachios are so expensive. And I asked my stepson, "Have you ever had a pistachio before?" And he said, "No, they're gross." And I said, "You've never tried them. How do you know if they're gross? Why don't you try one?" So he went and he tried one, and he actually said, "Oh, well, actually, these are really good." And now he likes pistachios because of me. He actually likes nuts in general because of me. And it was because I challenged him in such a small way that he hadn't been previously challenged in that kind of way before. He got used to trying new things because I told him, I said, "You don't have to like it. I'm not telling you that you need to try it and like it. I'm saying you have to try it. And if you don't like it, then you don't like it. But if you do like it, then you got to try something new that you like. And now you have that forever." So doing things like that have been really good memories for me, like positive memories I've had with kids. I have a lot of trauma directly tied to growing up and having to be around children in a time of my life where I didn't want to be, and how much it deeply affected me, and how I wanted to grow up around my own family, like my own future family, and my own how I, if I wanted kids or didn't want kids, and if I wanted to be around people with kids or not, or if I wanted to be friends or date people with kids or not, all of that stuff. So a lot of trauma, a lot of trauma related to that. And having these good memories, positive memories, helps me remember that it's not black and white thinking. Not every experience is bad. Just because I had a lot of bad experiences doesn't mean that there isn't room for good experiences too. People like Bean help me remember that. People like my stepson trying the pistachios help me to remember that. Having a picture that my eldest niece drew me when she was like 7 or 8 years old. I still have that picture. And she's a tattoo artist now. And I told her I really want her to sign the picture that she drew for me so that I can keep it. Not that I would have it tattooed on me. Because I'm not that bold. But it ties directly into the fact that I being has tattoos on their arm of drawings each of their kids did, each of their daughters did as they were growing up, like several different child's tattoos tattooed on their arm. And I think that is the dopest shit I have ever heard in my whole life. And that is a whole thing that people do, apparently. The fact that Bean learned that and did it, and it's just. Bean is one of my favorite people to know, even though we don't talk nearly as often as I want. They're very busy, and I respect that. But the fact that I know who they are and all of this dope shit about them and how they affected my life and how I affected theirs, it just means a lot to me. If I ever write a memoir, I will probably include Bean, and I will make that chapter be a toast is not a meal bean. Okay, let's get back to reading the fucking book, shall we? Chapter 3. Mom, can I sleep over at Rebecca's? What a great chapter title. During my tween and teen years, there was a singular exception to my food restrictions: the sleepover. The rules I had both absorbed and created for food were suspended during sleepovers. There was a specific, wordlessly agreed upon rule between all tweens: what we ate and how much at sleepovers was classified. Sleepovers was about eating second dinners after our parents went to sleep. Sleepovers were about gummy worms and popcorn, marshmallow fluff, chocolate bars, and the notebook. Sleepovers were about taking a break from talking to boys on MSN by walking to the convenience store and eating a whole McCain deep and delicious frozen chocolate cake with our bare hands in the parking lot. Sleepovers were the fate of our bodies, happiness, and popularity did not depend on whether we ate a second Pop Tart. We could just eat if we wanted to. But most importantly, sleepovers were about mac and cheese. The first time I cooked mac and cheese was at a sleepover at Rebecca's house in seventh grade. I used to love going to Rebecca's house and giving myself permission to experience pure food freedom. I remember being afraid of the rapidly boiling water and cooking the noodles until they were soggy. We had learned through MSN conversations that the way to know pasta was cooked was by throwing it at the wall, and if it stuck to the wall, it was ready to be drained. I remember that rule. If it bounced off, it wasn't cooked. I remember adding our soggy noodles to a bowl and spooning them too hot into my mouth. I relied very heavily on mac and cheese throughout my 20s, and I hope that you will rely on it too. Throw some uncooked noodles at the wall if you must. Just know that if they stick to the wall, they are terribly overcooked. Boxed mac and cheese is the second part of the holy trinity of depression cooking. Make sure to honor him by whipping up something delicious and indulging. Here are my personal favorite combinations. Combo number one: mac and cheese with frozen peas and veggie ground. So, like textured vegetable protein, I think that's what that means. I've had TVP, it's okay. Um, yeah, throwing it against the wall, the backwash, the noodle, um, with the spaghetti. Yeah, um, I had TVP in some soup mixes, and I know that TVP is like what a lot of the ground meat, um, frozen ground meat, is usually made from TVP, texturized vegetable protein, which is made from soy. Combination number two: mac and cheese with a can of Thai chili flaked light tuna. That is a fucking awesome suggestion. I've only ever had mac and cheese with flaked light tuna plain. I think the Thai chili would be really good. I like adding sriracha to my mac and cheese sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. I think that would be a great way to do it because spicy tuna is totally a vibe. Combination number three: mac and cheese with fresh basil and a handful of shredded cheddar cheese. Okay. Combination four: mac and cheese with a smoothie on the side. Sure, okay. Combo five: mac and cheese with a chocolate meal replacement drink on the side. She goes on to add additional things in her suggestions. We're going to skip those again because we're trying to minimize the actual recipe reading parts. Oh, I do want to read the one part though. Uh, my favorite starter for amuse bouche. My favorite starter for mac and cheese is the dill pickle, straight out of the jar. And a remix: serve your mac and cheese in a leaf of romaine lettuce and eat it like a taco. Thanks for the tip, Margaret. Okay. Chapter 4: Recalling Taco Sushi. TAKO Sushi. In the sixth grade, I became close to a friend who I'm going to call Jessica. It was the first time I got caught up in the dramatic whirlwind of 20 temporary best friendships. A friendship, like many, a seal it with a matching BFF necklace relationship that would have the staying power of fruity lip balm flavor. Jessica was white and blonde with soft skin. I wanted to love her and be her all at the same time. I envied her glistening pink lip gloss, her La Senza girl push up bras, and the way she straightened her straw colored hair pin drop straight. We had a lot of sleepovers together. Sometimes my triplet sister was invited, but mostly I would go alone. I always enjoyed this window into her life, witnessing her siblings argue with her parents, just like in my house. We were twins and just starting to go places on our own. If her mom was too tired to cook us dinner, she would offer to drop us off at a restaurant to eat. We started going to an all you can eat restaurant called Taco Sushi on Don Mills Road. To say that eating in a restaurant without parental supervision in 2005 and paying the bill with your own babysitting money felt like the pinnacle of burgeoning adulthood would be an understatement. It really did feel like a real life 13 going on 30 moment. Feeling like an adult gave rise to seemingly adult desires like hunger. When we went to Taco Sushi, a hunger opened inside me that it didn't know existed. My family was nowhere to be found, and there was no one to ask, "Are you going to eat all of that?" There were no watchful aunties to warn, "Careful," or call me brave for eating. I didn't need to be vigilant about eating small mouthfuls around my classmates. There were no tween boys during lunch breaks to utter stupid remarks around deep throating that would spread through MSN chat rooms. My walls were down. My alarms were off. It was just me, a beautiful Jessica, and a roomful of chattering and munching adult strangers minding their own business. I couldn't hide my hunger in front I couldn't hide my hunger in front of platefuls of all you can eat sushi. Sometimes it felt like a whole year's worth of hunger unfurled in that restaurant, drenched in soy sauce and small dollops of wasabi, a hunger that frightened me slightly, that I might have thought of as monstrous or grotesque. When Jessica's mom would pick us up, we had talked so much and eaten so much we were almost delirious. I was unabashedly full of sushi, not having thought of my waistline or my schoolgirl round midsection once. Instead, we had spent the evening filling our bellies with California rolls, salmon sashimi, shrimp and yam and broccoli tempura, and red dragon rolls while unsophisticated laughter spilled out of our throats. We poured packets of soy sauce over steamed rice and spooned it into our mouths. Jessica was atrocious with chopsticks and spent the evening picking up the sushi with her hands while I howled. Jessica and I settled into the pull-out couch in the basement while we watched a VHS. I was so at ease, my heart didn't even quicken when her arms pulled me into her body so that I was curved into hers like a small spoon. Her hands dipped under my pajama shirt to draw patterns with her fingertips on my arms and back and bare chest. I didn't even wince when she traced my body hairs with her fingers, the thick hair on my forearms and the swirl of hairs at the nape of my neck. She ran her hands through the hair on my head, and I just felt comfortable, eyes closing while wrapped in her arms. We woke up the next morning holding hands, a sticky film of sweat between our palms, fuzz playing on the television in front of us. One day after outdoor recess, I arrived in class to a crowd of students whispering around my desk. I walked over to my desk with my heart gradually making larger leaps until it reached my throat, arming my way through the students until I could see a handwritten yellow sticky note stuck to the center of my desk. It read, Sonali is a pig. I stood for many moments as I processed this new message, eyesight slightly blurring from tears, while many sets of eyes watched me in hushed silence. Our teacher entered the room, instructing everyone to take their seats. I was used to the way Sonali is Harry would occasionally circulate when we played broken telephone during indoor recess. From the moment Liam shared the news about visiting the zoo in junior kindergarten with the embellishment that the tiger was just as hairy as Sonali's arms, and the whole classroom erupted into laughter, I knew that my body hair stood out and was something bound to be made fun of. But pig? How was I a pig? I could have more easily stomached monkey, which I was usually likened to. An atlas moth had landed and was settling on my heart while my thoughts flipped through memories like my mother flipping through voicemail recordings on the landline at the end of the week, deleting some, stopping to take the handwritten notes of her others. My fears around greed and hunger were mounting. Did I eat too much? Who saw me and when? I had done a group project with Charlotte, and we had eaten Big Macs at McDonald's with her dad before going to the library last week. But we had all eaten Big Macs. She had too, and we had a shared secret. It couldn't have been her. My mother packed small, respectable portions for our lunches. No one had seen me gorge at lunch. I always ate slowly and was usually still hungry afterwards. The lesson had started, and my deskmate noticed I was still gazing at the note on my desk. She leaned over. It was Jessica, she whispered into my ear so that I could hear her hot breath or feel her hot breath. Someone saw her come in during recess, she added after an uncomfortable pause. I'm sorry. So this was the end. This was the equivalent of Jessica wiping off a tropical punch flavored lip balm and replacing it with some blue raspberry flavor. The sacredness of the sleepover had been sullied. It was as if Jessica had walked up the aisle in the middle of Mass and ripped the host, the sacramental bread, right out of the priest's hand and plopped it into her mouth before communion was blessed. My sleepover, adult sized hunger was no longer consecrated and comfortable. We would never fall asleep again, hand in hand. I shook my leg up and down, painfully waiting for the bell to ring. A bunch of rice dishes. If you're not a regular rice eater, maybe this section will convince you. I love bread. I will be the first person to go to bat for bread, especially after surviving disordered eating and the propaganda of diet culture, which has demonized bread. But I get very frustrated because I often buy a beautiful loaf of sourdough with the best of intentions and fail to eat it before it goes stale or moldy. A bag of dried white rice is good to cook and eat, well, forever. Gasp, controversial opinion. Rice dishes always comfort me. I have a memory of living with a very sweet combination of roommates in my last year of university: Charity, Brittany, and Julie. Between Charity, from the Filipino diaspora, Brittany, from the Chinese diaspora, and myself, from the Indian diaspora, we ate a ton of rice. One thing that perplexed our white roommate Julie was that each of us had our own specific bag of rice in our small kitchen. Charity ate medium grain Nishiki Haiga rice. Brittany ate Calrose rice. I grew up eating long grain basmati and swore by it. There are so many rice varieties to choose from, and you're free to explore. I absolutely understand. I I grew up in a small white waspy, if you know, you know, um, little town of about 10,000 people. I know that isn't little by some people's standards, but compared to some of the places I've lived, 10,000 is like a drop in the bucket. Very, very white community. We didn't have a lot of different types of ethnic food. We had Italian food, we had Mexican food, and we had Chinese food, and that was it. There wasn't a whole lot of things to try. And the stuff in the frozen aisle was mostly frozen Mexican types of foods because we were in the Pacific Northwest and we're pretty close to Mexico in relation to everything else. That Mexican food was very popular regionally, um, for people to buy frozen things for. So I didn't really experience a lot of ethnic food until I moved across the country in my 20s. And that's when I got to try Indian food for the first time. I was absolutely blown away with how good Indian food was, and I ate every single thing I could possibly try at least once while I lived um, in Washington, D.C. And it wasn't just Indian food, but I found myself loving and going back to Indian food often. I love curry. I love all kinds of curries. Um, and there's so many different types of regional flavors of curry. You can't, just like Chinese food is, like when we had Chinese food in my hometown, I'm pretty sure it was like Mandarin Chinese food. It wasn't Sichuan, it wasn't um, Hong Kong. It was very specifically Mandarin Chinese food. So I didn't get to try a lot of differentiating stuff either. Growing up as a vegetarian, Indian food is my lifeline. Yep. Um, I also got to try Thai food for the first time, and equally good. Really, really loved Thai food also. So trying these different types of food, it was like my brain exploded from how much sudden diversity I was exposed to. But I think nothing hit me harder than Japanese food. And most people, when you say Japanese food, what they think of is ramen and sushi. But the thing is, there are so much different types of Japanese food that people, Western white people, never get exposed to, ever. And I was so lucky and fortunate that I got to be exposed to some of this food. And I kind of became a little obsessed. I'm not going to lie. Japanese food is pretty frequently in my rotation of food that I cook and eat for myself and for my spouse. Enough so that my spouse looks at me sometimes and says, "Can we please just have spaghetti for dinner?" Just not even like when my spouse says spaghetti, they mean spaghetti noodles with marinara sauce, and that's pretty much it. Like nothing else, no meatballs, no different types of noodles, uh, no chunky tomato sauce. It's just marinara sauce and spaghetti noodles. And you know what? That's fine. I am absolutely fine with making and eating spaghetti with marinara sauce sometimes. But I really genuinely love rice dishes a lot. And I got told because of the whole diet culture thing, the whole war on carbohydrates, um, bread and rice are evil. You can't eat them. Potatoes are evil. Corn is evil. You can't eat these things. They're bad for you. They're just carbs. They don't have anything valuable or nutritious in them. You should just not eat them. That's bullshit. Don't believe that. I learned about how specifically with rice and also oatmeal, um, they become rice specifically becomes a resistant starch if you let it cool for up like 30 minutes at most. If you let it cool completely, it becomes a resistant starch. It becomes a different, your body processes it differently than just plain white bread. Similarly, like eating fermented bread that's made with sourdough, is better for your body because of it being a fermented food, adding these additional gut friendly microbiome stuff to your body. It's good for you. So now I try to make a more of an effort to make fried rice for myself as a regular like lunchtime food. And stir fries with fried rice are some of the easiest fucking things to make when you just want to eat and you don't want to be complicated about it. You just throw one or two veg and one protein and some leftover rice into a skillet, a hot skillet, and you add a little bit of oil. It doesn't have to be sesame oil. It doesn't have to be butter. It doesn't have to be olive oil. It can be whatever oil you feel like you want and have. It doesn't have to be authentic. Who gives a fuck? It can be fucking lard if that was what tastes good to you. And it is. Lard is also really tasty. Don't let anybody fucking yell at you and tell you that lard is evil and bad because it's animal fat. Fuck those people too. I have not personally had natto. I admittedly am kind of scared of natto. Um, but mostly it's just not available readily where I'm at. Especially now that I live in the Midwest. The Midwest is like a devoid of ethnic food. I have to special order ingredients now, which is the worst feeling ever when I spent so much of my life growing up in the Pacific Northwest where I had places like fuck, what's it called? It's been so far, I'm so far removed that I'm actually forgetting what it's called. Um, it starts with an H. I can't remember. I have to look it up now. Damn it. Um, it's like a grocery supermarket, Asian grocery supermarket, like fucking Walmart, but for Asian food. Um, Seattle. I can spell Wajimaya. That's the name of the place. Wajimaya. I used to be able to just go down the street, couple 10-15 minute bus ride to get to Wajimaya and get any type of vegetarian food I possibly could get. Or not vegetarian. Shit, I was reading what you said, Fuzzy. Any type of Asian ingredient I could possibly get from Wajimaya for fucking pennies because they got everything bulk anyway. Now I have to special order everything. While as a vegetarian, I find lard annoying because it's present in food, keeps me from eating it, but no judgment. Understandable. Um, I keep forgetting that you're vegetarian. I'm sorry. And you literally just said that you're vegetarian like two chats earlier. Um, what was I gonna say? Natto. Natto looks scary because of the biofilm, and I'm sure the funk is really really strong. I've seen a couple YouTube creators who talk about how to get over the fear with natto and how to eat it, and it makes me think like natto is like the Japanese version of Vegemite for white people. People are like, "Ew, Vegemite or Marmite? That just oh, how can you like that?" But you're not supposed to eat it by like the tub. You're not supposed to eat Vegemite or Marmite by the tub. You're supposed to scrape a small amount onto whatever vehicle you're using it for. Brewer's yeast, the yeast flavor is so strong and salty if you're not used to knowing what to do with it, and it can just punch you in the mouth. So I imagine that natto is very similar in that regard. I think if I had the opportunity to try it, I would love to, but I would be afraid to buy it and try it because then I would feel like I was wasting food. And that's a food insecurity issue with me, which is another reason that I completely relate to the author about food insecurity. I grew up really, really poor. Um, my parents were what some people would call functional poor people. They got credit cards and they would max them out, and then they would go between payments, and like they would spend the whole year paying off the card just to turn around and max it out again for like a holiday or something like that. So they would have to keep jobs with enough money that they could pay off these cards, but then we couldn't qualify for food stamps because my parents made too much money because they were paying off credit cards. And that was my childhood. So we would stretch our food budget really, really far. And one of the things my parents especially were very, very strong about was not to waste food. If it's put on your plate, you need to eat it. You can't just throw it away. If you are eating something and you're full, you put it in a Tupperware, you put it in the fridge, and you eat it later. You don't throw it away, and you eat whatever food you have until it's done. So for me, it often looked like if I ate a lot of food, it was because I didn't want to waste it. And if I bought something, like I bought a big container of a certain product, I would have to eat it all until it was done. Sometimes I would eat just the same food for several days because I couldn't justify um, making other food because that food hadn't been finished yet. And yeah, I could freeze it and maybe eat it later. And sometimes I did if I had the money to have Ziploc bags, or if I had a container that was safe to freeze in, and the food wouldn't get freezer burnt, because that was another thing that often happened. If you put something in a Tupperware, if it didn't have like cling film or plastic wrap, it would there would be air trapped in it, and it would cause freezer burn. The food would taste bad, and I would rather eat the same thing until I ran out of it than put something in the freezer to eat it later only for it to have freezer burn on it. And I wouldn't want to eat it. Nothing could get rid of the flavor. It was like a stale flavor, but freezer burn. So if I got something like natto and I paid money for it, and I didn't like it, I would feel awful throwing it away. But I would rather throw it away than force myself to eat it and make myself sick. And I've definitely given myself food poisoning more times than I care to admit because I would eat something past the point of it being safe because I didn't want to throw it out, but I didn't want to, um, but I knew I still needed to eat it. So that's how I feel about the natto. But I think I'd be willing to try it in a couple of the applications that I saw from um, that one YouTube creator. And as far as um, special ordering ingredients now, the alternative is to travel down to the bigger metropolitan area that I live by and get ingredients and bring them back with me, which is totally something I would be willing to do every so often. But I also found a online seller that ships to my area. Like they have a some sort of setup here. I don't know the logistics, to be perfectly honest, but they offer a bunch of different Asian type. Oh my goodness, excuse me, Asian type groceries. The application is WEEE exclamation point. It's a website and it's an app, I believe, in like Google Store or Apple Store that you can get. Um, Not all of them deliver to your area. It's kind of like Instacart is only available in so many cities. We is only available in so many cities. But I'm really interested in possibly getting some ingredients from them. I especially noticed that they have lye water, LYE water. Um, and I point that out because I like to make um, fermented bread products like pretzels. And in order to have an authentic pretzel that you make at home, you need to dip it in lye water. Now you can technically do sodium carbonate rather than lye water. And the way you make sodium carbonate is you take baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate, and you put it on a baking sheet, spread it thin on a baking sheet, and you cook it in an oven at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for something like 2 hours, I want to say. That gets rid of the Bi and bicarbonate and just makes it sodium carbonate. And then you can do a water bath that way. But the difference with that is that it has a texture more similar to a bagel than it does to a pretzel when you do it in a water bath rather than a lye dip. And you have to do it as a water bath because you have to rinse it after you're done. You can't cook it after dipping it in a sodium carbonate water bath. Otherwise, it'll taste like soap. It doesn't cook off the way lye water does in the oven. So I'd love to get some lye water in order to make properly tasting pretzels in the future. And this distributor, We, has lye water as an option. They only have one product. That's the only downside. Alternatively, I could go to Walmart, but I feel more comfortable waiting for We to have lye water available for me to purchase than to go to fucking Walmart. And at the same time, we live in a post capitalist hellscape, or a late stage capitalism hellscape. Post capitalism doesn't exist yet. Don't get ahead of yourself, bird. Um, and because of that, we have to sometimes live with the fact that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, which means it's okay if the only thing you have access to is fucking Walmart. Buy the food at Walmart. Buy the products at Walmart. They are predatory in that they are specially catered to people who are in the lower income brackets, and their stuff is not quality and sold really cheap and meant to be replaced if it's anything that's quote unquote permanent. Like you have to buy 3 shirts to have the same lasting duration as one Walmart, or you have to buy 3 Walmart shirts for the same lasting power as one regular shirt from any other distributor. And when you're poor, you do what you have to do to survive. And that means buying shit from Walmart or taking the extra time to wait a little while longer for a product to become available through a different distributor that makes you feel a little less like hating yourself when you buy from them. Anyway, rice. Trying all the different types of rice dishes when I got to live on the East Coast in the capital, food that I had not been exposed to before. Um, in my little white town, my little waspy town, and then coming and moving to areas like the Southwest where there isn't a whole lot of food that isn't Mexican food, or to be more specific, Tex-Mex, um, or moving to the Midwest where there isn't a whole lot of food that isn't Scandinavian based because all of the people who immigrated to this area of the country are from Denmark and Sweden and Norway, and the food of those people reflects in the culture of the people here several generations later. uh, every sort of ethnic store that has opened here, ethnic grocery store that has opened here, has not lasted very long, to my understanding from the research I've done. There's just not a market for it here. And that's not to say that there aren't individual families who might be Indian or Asian or African, anything like that. They have to make do with the ingredients that they have. And I think that's another important thing a lot of people have to do when they like ethnic food or they come from an ethnic cultural background. They have to adapt to where they are. And seasonal ingredients is a very like it's a trendy thing now. But realistically, modern grocery stores have warped the way we behave about food. Um, Foods that we have no business eating in the middle of winter, tropical fruits and summer fruits and vegetables, um, that wouldn't even grow in the climate that I'm currently living in, that you're currently living in. We have access to these things because of grocery stores. And you can tell the difference between a cantaloupe that you buy in the middle of December and a cantaloupe that you buy in the middle of June. The fruit will taste better because it's actually underneath the sun and naturally ripening on the vine. The natural sugars will have matured in a way that you won't be able to have the same sort of quality from a LED full spectrum light in a hydroponic farm or in a greenhouse. And cuisines are built around what's in season. You're not always going to have fruits and vegetables available all year. So people learned how to preserve things with fermentation and with drying and salting and canning and all of these things to preserve foods to last longer. And we still do those on an industrial scale because we have to feed so many people. And a lot of these skills are just becoming not taught the same way they used to. I never learned how to can. I'm sure my mother probably knows how to can, but she never did. Um, all of that, all of the starting costs, quote unquote, to getting canning material are really expensive, which I think is a big reason why a lot of people don't do it now. But the thing about canning supplies is that once you have all of those big pieces you need in order to do things like pressure can, specifically, that's like a one and done thing. You don't have to buy those materials again. You need to buy new rings and lids for your jars. And occasionally you'll have to replace jars because they do break and they do crack and stuff like that. But the actual equipment to do the processing is almost a one-time thing. It's very rarely that you'll see people need to buy pressure canners every couple of years, especially if you do it right, if you take care of your shit, which is another thing that I think a lot of people don't get taught how to take care of things the same way. We're used to things being having a short shelf life because everything is so poorly made. But learning how to can is a very valid and important skill that more people need to do. And you don't even need a pressure canner. Pressure canning is for stuff that isn't acidic. So if you're canning tomatoes, you just use a water bath canning. You don't need to use a pressure canner. And in a lot of cases with certain fruits and vegetables, you add acid to the canning solution in order to make them work in a water bath. That's why acid pickles are a whole thing. Fermented pickles versus acid pickles. Acid pickles are made with acetobacter um, vinegar. So, vinegar that's made from grapes and fermented wheat and stuff like that. Stuff that turns alcohol but then goes a little too far and then becomes vinegar. Versus like a fermented vinegar, which is usually made from high sugar fruits. Um, Different kind of procedure. The stuff that makes acetobacter vinegar is vinegar made from alcohol versus lacto fermented vinegar, which is made from the natural sugar um, bacteria eating the sugar. And eventually um, it runs out of sugar and it just kind of dies. It's still drinkable, it's still viable fermented vinegar, but it's not a live culture anymore. But you can still put those vinegars on top of fruits and vegetables and then can them. And that just extends the life of those things a little longer. And you can use those things and you can have those summer fruits and vegetables in the wintertime when you wouldn't normally have access to those things. We take that for granted now with um, modern grocery stores and processed foods and the way things are. And we get away from that relationship with food, that seasonal relationship, and that um, growing food ourselves and having a closer relationship with the way our food is grown. Um, it's very trendy for people to care about that stuff. But I think, especially with things like vegetarianism, it's cheaper to grow vegetables than it is to raise a cow. And a lot of people who were poor farmers, poor families, like they would all collectively put in money to buy one cow, that kind of stuff, when it would be just as easy to grow certain types of beans and certain types of vegetables. And then if you complete a whole meal with all of these things, then you have a full spectrum meal. Certain vegetables do hit those essential nutrients. You just have to go through the process of growing them and having them be grown in an area that is suitable to that climate can be a challenge. But then you also have to take into consideration when you're getting these specialty vegetables, what the growing situation is like for the indigenous people that grow them and the people who are farming them. Are they being treated with the common decency necessary? Like, nothing in the world is cruelty free as much as everybody would like to pretend that it is. That's the unfortunate fact of the world that we live in now. And I'm not telling anybody to not eat things or to only eat certain things. I think that awareness of where your food is coming from and how it's processed and how it's collected and all of that are all really important things to know when you're making choices about this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people don't. They just want to eat food and not have to think about it. But doing that is in itself a form of disordered eating. It's really important to be aware of your body and know what you need to be healthy. And yes, it's important that fed is best. It's also important to take into account that you can be undernourished. Just because you're getting your calorie count for the day, you can get your calorie count for the day from a cake or an entire meal that has all of the proteins and vegetables and fats that you need. But you're still hitting your calorie goal, right? So it shouldn't matter. But you and I both know. You and I both know that it matters. But then also taking into consideration that people who are disabled, in whatever flavor that means, they don't always have the energy to make these things. You might not financially have the money to buy these things. So you deal with what you can with what you have. And I think if everybody is just doing their best, that's all that matters, right? Do your best. More people can learn from that statement and not be guilted or shamed about it. I have to be careful personally now because I was diagnosed with conditions specifically related to my heart. I have high calcium scoring in my heart because of my cholesterol problems. And my cholesterol problems are partially to do with my diet, partially to with the fact that my body creates a lot of inflammation because of my pain disorders. And inflammation in the body is often presented through the body creating cholesterol. Um, all these different things. So I have to be very careful with processed foods now, specifically foods that are high in dietary fat, even healthy fat. I have to be careful because of how my body processes that. So I can't eat things like hot dogs, except as a treat every so often, even though hot dogs are so good. And I remember my grandfather being like, I won't eat a hot dog because where I'm from, hot dogs are made from lips and assholes. And I remembered being fucking horrified when my grandfather told us that as a child, not realizing that only part of what he said is true, and also that it's not a bad thing to be considerate of the respect of eating an entire animal, using an entire animal, not just the choicey parts. That is a very white supremacy quoted, colonizer quoted way of eating an animal. If you're going to use an animal for anything, you need to use all of it, and consciously and respectfully, without causing any like cruelty, like doing it as ethically as you possibly can. And there were ways that our ancestors did that. We used certain animal parts as ways to tan clothing and to process wood and as fuel. And we use the hides and we use the bones and we use the meat, all of the meat, not just the yummier parts, but also the organs. We use the whole animal and we don't the same way anymore. And the people who do are looked as being dirty or gross or whatever. But the thing is that there are plenty of cultures that is just meat. and they eat it and they enjoy it, and they're not dirty or gross for enjoying it. People like to other and alienate, and that is so unfair. And I think people need to be more understanding and kind. Um, I still struggle with organ meats, admittedly, because of the iron content in a lot of organ meats. But there's ways to get around that, and I think a lot of people are learning how to do that too. Drinking some water. Don't get me started on mushrooms, though. Mushrooms and other fungi. Um, I want to like mushrooms, but I struggle really, really hard with mushrooms. All right, I'm going to read a little section for this part and then I'm going to jump ahead again. No fried kimchi fried rice. I absolutely adore kimchi. Kimchi is a Korean dish that's made of fermented cabbage. That's very simplified. There's tons more kimchi than just cabbage. It's salty and spicy, and because it's fermented, it's packed with good probiotics. Sometimes when I'm feeling down and blue, a big punch of flavor can be invigorating. This recipe was my first experiment with minute rice, and I've had good feedback. Including fermented foods is good for you. People need to try more fermented things and not be scared, including myself. Rice cooker rice. Okay, I'm going to be honest here, folks. I truly thought cooking rice was straightforward until I lived with white roommates who would stir the rice on the stove like they were preparing a roux and promptly throw out the pot of rice once it's a soupy mess, declaring that it was too complicated. I grew up cooking rice often, so I can't say I relate, but I'm going to try my best to empathize here with folks who might not have grown up with rice by offering two options. One, if you simply cannot cook the rice, opt for an instant microwavable rice packet. I keep a few of these in my pantry for emergencies. Two, use a rice cooker. Believe it or not, my white husband got me onto rice cookers. I always cooked rice stovetop before we met. Here's what you do. A. Hottest take. Do not stress about washing your rice. I'm giving you permission not to wash it. There. All washing does is remove some of the starchiness so that the grains don't stick together as much once cooked. People on the internet will claim your rice is dirty or that there are harmful chemicals in your rice. My thoughts are that the internet is full of fear mongering information on how the foods I choose to eat are slowly killing me. If I abided by everyone's instructions, I honestly would have very little to eat. And I don't want you to be afraid of rice. I think rice is magical. I think it's better to eat something than nothing, and the responsibility lies with our governments and policymakers to ensure food manufacturers produce foods that are safe to eat. You, you focus on eating what is available to you. B. Put your rice and water in the rice cooker. The ratio for long grain rice is 2 to 1. That means 2 parts water, 1 part rice. For every cup of rice you cook, add 2 cups of water, a pinch of salt, and a teaspoon of oil. Add the lid, plug it in, and turn it on. The number of times I have turned on the rice cooker and not plugged it in, I'll tell you. Submark I. Short grain rice and medium grain rice have different ratios, somewhere between 1 to 1 and 1.5 to 1. Some rice cookers indicate different rice to water ratios. Read the instruction manual for your rice cooker and look up the ratio for the type of rice you are cooking. Rice cooker rice and beans. Jeffrey and I eat rice cooker rice and beans at least once a week. It is somewhat of a staple for us, and maybe it'll be for you too. There are a few things that make this a depression food for me. You now know that I don't wash my rice and I use canned beans. No shame in going canned over dried. And I can attest to that also because as much as people will say that dried beans are cheaper by the pound and all it takes is for you to soak them overnight before you can cook them the next day, you can still really fuck up a pot of beans. I know plenty of Latinx people who will get fucking mad if you cook beans incorrectly. And I also know that certain beans will produce toxic chemicals up until the point that they are fully cooked. You cannot eat certain beans until they are fully cooked. So if you eat a half cooked bean, you are potentially putting yourself in danger. So get the fucking canned beans if you don't want to cook the fucking dried beans. Anybody who is shitty to you about it can fuck right off. Seriously. Jumping ahead. Okay, we're about 4 minutes out from 3 hours. I'm gonna finish reading this chapter up to the recipe, and then I'm going to read us out. I hope there hasn't been any redeems. I hate saying that. Oh, Fuzzy, you fucking streaker. Oh my god. I didn't even notice. Um, Normally I'm so excited to get redeems. I want more people to do redeems, but this is one of the few times where I'm kind of okay that there aren't a lot of redeems because I'm reading and I'm not focusing on that page. Chapter 5, Privacy Please. There's no privacy in a large Indian household. Everything is shared. Bedrooms, wardrobes, underwear is handed down from cousin to neighbors. Desserts are cut in half and rationed so that everyone gets a piece, but sometimes you're not fast enough and your sibling eats your portion first. Relatives have keys and open the front door unannounced. Until puberty, you shower with your sister to save water. Some bathroom doors don't have locks, and if you haven't had enough fiber and take too long on the shitter, chances are someone will barge in to lecture you. If you want to gossip with your friend about their crush on the phone, you must listen carefully for an echo indicating that someone else in the house has picked up an extension to listen in on your conversation. Oh, that's a thing that Gen Z will never know what that felt like. If you want to change your clothes without someone walking in, you must open the closet door so that it overlaps with your closed bedroom door so that if someone tries to come in, the doors will bang together and you will have a warning to quickly drape a shirt over your bare chest. You start every new page of your diary that you hide under your bed with, "Please don't read this. Please respect my privacy. This is my personal diary," only to have the ensuing passage repeated back to you over dinner during some thinly veiled conversation. I know that one too. One evening, some relatives were visiting, and kids my age and I were watching The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring in the family room. Some of the kids were mouthing the lines, I choose immortal life along with Liv Tyler. I was sitting on the couch beside a tween relative who was close to my age. His sweaty hand was placed on my left thigh. I thought nothing of it until he started gripping me painfully, and I peeled my eyes away from the illuminated screen to see a pillow over his lap. His hand was nestled underneath in his crotch, the pillow rising and falling with determined movement. I leapt up, my heart bursting through my throat, my stomach falling through my pelvic floor. What? He asked, bewildered, as if I had done something inappropriate. None of the other kids noticed. They were bewitched by the movie. I stumbled into the kitchen where the adults were. He's being gross, I stammered. He was touching himself. Then don't watch the movie, I was advised, but no one made eye contact with me and instead continued preparing the food. A large plastic container of spring mix lettuce was placed in front of me. Pick out the slimy ones and make a salad. I sat down reluctantly to my assigned task. I tried to avoid being in rooms alone with him, but he was in the house often. I realized that anything could happen even with others around. One afternoon he slapped my ass while I was bent over the sink in the bathroom, applying lip gloss in a bikini before departing for a neighborhood pool to go swimming. You should dress sexy more often, he said. I closed the bathroom door for an attempt at privacy, then returned to my bedroom and donned an oversized t-shirt. I didn't want to be sexy. When I walked past the closed bathroom he was occupying, he was moaning, masturbating theatrically. That has nothing to do with me, I tried to convince myself. Boys were gross. He skipped down the stairs once he was done and bounced toward me with a big smile on his face. He placed two wet hands on my shoulders and planted a sticky kiss on my cheek. Have fun, he exclaimed. I felt my lunch bubble in my stomach. I'll talk about that later. That's really hard for me. Um, as a non-binary person, and a person who was condition who's who was raised female, um, that kind of grossness was, I don't want to say acceptable, but definitely looked the other way often. And that has a lot to do with there's patriarchy in general. It's really hard reading that because I can remember similar things happening to me. And that's really hard to have to continuously go back and forth with having to deal with that. The next day in school, a friend and I were huddled at the back of the classroom during indoor recess while it rained in the schoolyard. We were standing by the rows of hooks where coats and backpacks hung, while the rest of the class sat in their desks, talking. Why did you wrap this in Kleenex? I asked as we peeled bits off of a piece of jalebi to share. It's what I could find, she said. OMG, Amanda, this is the worst. So did you touch yourself yet? Amanda whispered. I giggled. No, I mouthed at her. You should try it. It's the best. Amanda had hit puberty in the second grade and was relentlessly bullied and sexually harassed at school for her large breasts. Our all white teachers and principal did nothing. Despite many visits to the principal's office by her racialized parents, I tried to stand up for her when boys tapped her breasts like drums in her gym class to no avail. She confided in me, but we never talked about race. We never spoke of gender. We didn't have the words yet. I share a bedroom. Where would I even do that? I whispered. The shower, come on. She laughed between crunching bits of sweet stale jelly. You've got to try it. You're 13. That evening when I got home, I was determined. I coiled my fingers through my luscious brush while conditioners set in my long, thick hair piled on top of my head, and even though I was alone in the shower, I felt my relative's sweaty hand gripping my thighs and jerked my hand free. I could see the pillow on his lap, its brown patchwork pattern twitching under the motion of his hand stroking his penis, his ragged breathing and his twisted smile. I felt disgusted. My older sister banged on the door. Are you done in there? I need to brush my teeth. In a minute, I responded and washed the conditioner out of my hair. I stood motionless for some time, staring at my face in my reflection. I felt gratitude for my small breasts, the size of two President's Choices, the decadent chocolate chip cookies, breasts that were nowhere near the size of Amanda's double D's. I didn't even envy her beauty because I didn't envy the harassment she experienced at school, but I still felt the weight of a large moth across my heart. In that moment, I wished I didn't have a body at all. I wished I could float through the rest of my days in an oversized t shirt and not be perceived at all. Oh, I think I'm going to have to stop. I didn't want to, but I'm having really bad gender dysphoria reading this section. So I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to listen to my heart. And it's too bad because I'm literally like barely there, but I'm not going to force myself through it. I'm going to be okay. It's okay. We're going to find somebody to raid. All one of us. I know it's important, even when there's only a couple in the audience, even if there's only just me. Um, Metrics are everything to the almighty gods, and it's important to do that. So I'm going to raid into Pisces because I adore Pisces. They are one of my favorite people, and I haven't been in one of their streams in a while. Thank you. Oh, damn it, Pi. I think I might. Um, either she's in the middle of a thing, or maybe it's because I'm too few, um, which is annoying. I'll probably just pop my head in then. Or I could pop into Falcor. I think I'll do that. Might as well. We like Falcor. I hope I spelled that right. Yeah, there we go. No, they're not letting me either. Well, you know what? Fuck them. It is what it is. I appreciate everybody who stopped in today to sit with me as I read this book. Thank you again. We'll be reading again probably Thursday. We'll be gaming tomorrow. And in the meantime, I hope that you have a lovely evening. Remember to take your meds, drink some water, have a good stretch. Maybe go outside tomorrow and enjoy the sunshine. And if you have any furry, feathery, or scaly babies, make sure to give them a hug and a kiss from me. Take care.